On today's edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, we finally have a game to talk about. On today's edition, Alex Baumgartner from the 5 Reasons Sports Network will be joining me to talk about the first 4 days of training camp for the Panthers and the upcoming doubleheader against the Nashville Predators on Monday, all on today's edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast.
You're Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into this Monday, September 26th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez, and you can follow me on Twitter at MondoMan12. Follow the show account on Twitter at LO_FLA Panthers. Don't forget to also subscribe to Locked On Fantasy Hockey with Flip Livingstone and Steel Roden and Locked On NHL, where they'll be covering all the preseason activities around the National Hockey League. So, Cats fans, like we spoke about at the very, very top of the episode, we have some two preseason games to talk about and preview, which will be tonight today at 4 p.m. and another one at 8 p.m. A split squad doubleheader for the Panthers. We've been talking about groups A and B getting on the ice in the first few days of practices, and this will be a perfect time to bring in my guest on the show, Alex Baumgartner from the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Alex, how are you doing, man?
I'm besides the audio problems I had just now, I'm doing great.
Hey, it's good vibes all over in South Florida. I mean, the Panthers are back at training camp. The Dolphins got a big win yesterday against the Buffalo Bills.
That was great.
So it was a great weekend overall here in South Florida. Of course, you and I are back in our current home bases of me in Orlando, you back in Toronto. But I want to give you the floor for maybe like 30 seconds to a minute and a half, and give the floor to you on what your first impressions have been really on the first 2 days of training camp for you, because you stayed there for the first 2 days. I only stayed there for the first one. So I want to give you the floor on what your impressions were.
First of all, they skate them hard. This team is going to be one of the most conditioned teams in the NHL. Obviously, they were one of the best teams in transition off the rush last season. That isn't going anywhere. You could tell just by the physicality and the high tempo of these skates in the first 2 days. They did all 4 days, but the first 2 days that I saw, Paul Maurice is working the hell out of these guys. And he said they're an extremely fit group. Rudolph Ballister coach said we're an extremely fit group. There's a lot of fit guys on this team. They were all hands and knees on the ice after those 20 minutes of board battle / skating around the net that they do at the end of every single practice. This team is going to be conditioned. They're not going to get tired late in games. And they're going to be disciplined because Paul Maurice is working them hard from day one of camp. There's no ifs or buts. They're going to skate hard, this team. And if they don't, they're sitting.
And it's funny because Paul Maurice emphasized not once, not twice, but 3 times from media day all the way to the 3rd day of practice, at least rewatching some of the pressers after about fitness testing. Day one, the media day, he spoke about hopefully we have some good tests, and then on the first 2 days emphasized more about how great the fitness test came from the players, about all the hard work that they're doing over the summer, and even to the point that it was seen as a competition for these veteran players to try to get the best fitness tests as much as they can. Of course, we don't get the results of those tests. We don't see how the criteria of it as well. But hey, the little bits that we've seen about it on the ice of course, they're going at full speed. It doesn't seem that they're just like lollygagging out there or dogging anything out there. So great to see that these guys are being pushed.
Exactly. And another thing, it wasn't like, obviously, training camps, you're not really running systems, especially when you're running two groups and you split the pro team into two groups pretty much. He definitely emphasized in media day, and he emphasized in his drills, they're going to win games and they're going to win puck battles 3 feet from the boards. And they work on that a lot. The second day of training camp was really physical. There was bodies flying into the boards. There was guys laying, like, not full hits that you'd see full speed in an NHL game, but they were throwing guys on the boards. You're competing. Guys still want to make the team. Guys that are on the team want to show guys that, this is what's going to happen in the NHL. The Butcher was throwing it around a little bit. Guys were putting bodies on bodies to try and, get up to game speed. They're playing a lot in those 50-50 battles. That's where you're going to get the puck. That's how you're going to move out into transition. The team is working on that. And if you're doing that day one of training camp, I'm going to assume you're going to do that the entire season. It's the little things for this team, and they're working on that right now. So I'm excited to see how it translates. And, some of these guys look a little bit bigger. Lundell looks a lot bigger this season. He did that one-on-one board battle at the end of practice after an hour against Barkov, and he looked just as good as Barkov. He was containing the puck. He was getting it back. I mean, Barkov is one of the strongest players in the league. Obviously, this is just training camp, but Lundell looks really strong on his bottom half. He can really hold his own on the ice when he's doing those turns near the boards. He looks good.
Mm-hmm. And one player that I want to talk about is Colin White. Colin White getting another chance with the Panthers, getting another chance in the NHL, signing with the Panthers. Excuse me. Bought out by Ottawa, struggled with injuries, but has played with both the Tkachuk brothers. He spoke about how he's been playing with Matthew Tkachuk since he was 6 years old, and really the familiarity that Paul Maurice has been putting out there with a line of Tkachuk, Bennett, and White, and that's your second line for this team, and players who have pretty much grown up together, and really having to play with both brothers, and also spoke about kind of like the differences of them. So that second line, which we're going to see a lot of something a little different than what we saw last year, that is really the line that come game one of the regular season that I'm going to be really focused on, because if Barkov and Verhaeghe are going to be together on that first line, then we're going to see a completely different look on that second one.
Just keep in mind, these are lines that we saw in training camp. And in training camp, there was two groups. There was Group A, there was Group B. Some teams are running 3-4 groups. It kind of depends on the team. Florida decided to run two groups. And as we said, they split the pros pretty much half and half. I think Group A had a little bit more of the pro roster there than Group B. So we're going to, depending on the rosters of the split squads, I'm going to assume Group A is going to be one of the teams in the split squad. Group B is going to be the other team in the split squad. So you're probably going to see that line of White, Tkachuk, and Bennett playing on the same team in Nashville in one of these two split squad games. Once the preseason continues and it's just preseason game and there's no split squad, it's going to be a little bit more of the pro team. Then you're going to kind of see lines getting a little bit more familiar. So right now it's probably going to be White, Bennett, Tkachuk, at least for the split squad game. Come opening night, you're not going to know who's on the line. Paul Maurice did emphasize the reason why he picked these lines in training camp. It wasn't too much of a big deal. It's just, Reinhardt's played with Barkov, and Tkachuk's played with Bennett, and then obviously Tkachuk and White have known each other since they were kids. He was kind of throwing stuff around, like just getting the familiarity going, because it's a new system. I think that's a pretty solid line, though, because Tkachuk and Bennett are two workhorses that are going to piss off the other opponent. And Colin White has skill. He had an injury problems in Ottawa. He's still a young player. He is a good player. And I think there's two guys on this team that came in that I think you can plug in the top 9 pretty much anywhere, and they're going to work out. The other guy we want to talk about is Rudolph Balcers, and I know Armando had that lined up. He's been playing with Verhaeghe and Barkov, and that guy has some skill. He has some skill. He's like, Florida is kind of like a place where you find yourself. Carter Verhaeghe, Sam Bennett kind of rejuvenated his game. Paul Maurice alluded to that in after day 1 of training camp. You have Anthony Duclair brings his game to another level here. A lot of guys come to Florida after not getting opportunities in other places. Balcer is coming from Ottawa and San Jose. Now, he told us he hasn't seen a group like this. Everyone seems the same age. Everyone's having fun. This team likes each other already. Rudolph Balcers is going to be an interesting guy to see. And as I said, if they're keeping the split squad / group A line is the same, you're going to see him with Barkov and Verhaeghe. Verhaeghe said he's excited to play with Balcers, and Balcers said he's excited to play with Barkey and Verhaeghe. That's going to be an interesting line to watch.
Mm-hmm. And at least covering this team for the last 2 seasons, when Barkov and Verhaeghe were first being put together on that first line, not much has been in that moment. It's like, okay, we don't know how long this is going to last, but of course they've been together since, and the chemistry between these two, it's always been them two, and they're always going to add a third person so that it doesn't mess up the chemistry between those two. A few times we've seen a Sam Reinhart on that line and during training camp, and then of course Balcers, who people love to bring up the underlying numbers for Rudolph Balcers from when he was in San Jose. So a plus for someone like him as well. But I do want to talk about a veteran on this team for the Florida Panthers and their chance of making the lineup. But we're going to discuss that next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. But first, we're going to tell you all about Athletic Greens. And our next partner is a product that I've started to use every day, because I started using AG1 because I need to take a little bit of a break from the coffee. So what is this stuff? With one delicious scoop of AG1, you're absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day right. This special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, energy, recovery, focus, and aging. All the things. Right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition with just one scoop in a cup of water every day. That's it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NHL Network. Again, that is athleticgreens.com/NHL Network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. Back on this Monday, September 26th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. I'm Armando Velez. I got Alex Baumgartner from the 5 Reasons Sports Network. And Alex, we spoke about the top line with Barkov, Verhaeghe, and possibly a Rudolph Balcers. Who knows how that would look. But one player that got to speak to the media on Saturday was veteran Eric Stahl. And we saw him in a line of Ryan Lomberg, Patrick Hornquist, along with Patrick Hornquist. And, of course, he spoke about how things didn't work out last year as far as his contract of trying to get into a place that he fit in. Obviously signed an AHL deal to go to the Olympics. 37 years old. He's been a captain of a team. He's been a 100-point scorer the year that the Carolina Hurricanes won the Stanley Cup. So, and also Paul Maurice spoke about the opportunity for guys to not only play center but wing. He spoke about it mostly on the first day of camp. So, first of all, where do you think what do you think Mark Stahl's chances of making this team, and what does that mean for someone like Eetu Luostarinen?
So for Eric Stahl, he'll probably make the team. He's probably going to play a jumbo role. I think if he makes the team, that's what it's going to be. The foot speed isn't there anymore, and that comes with age, obviously. The one thing Eric Stahl has is, he uses his body well. He's a big body. He's still strong. He still has the hands. Um, it's going to be kind of like Jumbo last year, where you're not going to put him in the lineup every game if he makes the team. He's going to be there for the locker room presence. He's a guy that you can trust when you need to throw someone in the lineup. But obviously, Florida is one of the fastest teams in the league. Eric Stahl doesn't have the foot speed to, play 82 games like that. I still think he will make the team. They brought him in for a PTO for a reason. You need veteran leadership. There's a lot of guys on an NHL roster, a lot of them that don't play. As we said, Jumbo had that role last year. He's probably going to take that role over if he makes the team. He's won the cup before. He's got gold medals. He's a guy that could get looks and discussions at the Hall of Fame, right? Like, he's a really good player in his prime, and he can really help guys out. And you know what? He could possibly make a difference. In Montreal, when he went to the Stanley Cup Finals, when he first made that team, people weren't really saying, "Oh, Eric Stahl is going to dominate." He played pretty good in the playoffs. And another thing, he's terrorized Florida his whole career. So now him being a Panther is pretty cool. For Eetu Luostarinen should make this team. However, they had him running with the AHL guys and the junior guys because he was wearing the blue jersey. And if you're at training camp, basically everyone in the white jersey was the pro team. The whole pro team was in the white jerseys. The only guy that was a forward, because the defense all wore red. I think the only guy that was consistently on the team last year that was wearing a blue jersey was Luostarinen, which means when they split the training camp teams into two and they go half ice each side, he's running with the guys like Sandys, Vilmanes, and some of these AHL guys in Charlotte. He's on the outside looking in terms of just the eye test. Now, I don't know if that's something that Paul Maurice is like, let's take this young guy and light a fire under him, see what he wants to do. That's my honest, gut feeling, because he was really good last season. And I think he's more beneficial to this team than a veteran Eric Stahl for an 82 games. Eric Stahl was wearing the white jerseys. They were making him do runs with the pro team. Now, when I say pro team, AHL team, they're still doing drills together. It's just 15 to 20 minutes of the hour-and-a-half session. They'll split them up, and they'll do board drills on each side. And the blue guys are kind of like the AHL guys, But I still think Luostarinen should make this team.
Mm-hmm. And then you have different coaches talking to, there's a lot of great communication between Paul Maurice and the assistant coaches. Of course, they have their meetings. They have the big whiteboards in the locker rooms saying, hey, we're going to split you up into this. Coaches, I want you to emphasize this part of the game. And like you said, lighting a fire hopefully under Eetu Luostarinen. And of course, just because you've been here the last 2 years and played a big role, there's no guarantee. And that's the thing with the new coaching staff as well for this Florida Panthers team. He spoke about familiarity, but he also, I don't doubt the amount of tape that Paul Maurice has watched from last year's team to see, okay, this is what this guy does well. Of course, with Luostarinen, this is a guy who mostly for him, it starts on the defensive side of the puck. He's been a guy who's been playing on the PK mostly. Of course, if he does play on the PK, he's going to have to find a new buddy because he was paired up with Jonathan Huberdeau last year for the most part. And as far as the eye test, he played well for the most part on that end. So maybe this is maybe this is a start of saying, okay, there's a veteran here. He has the reputation. That's the thing that Mark Stahl has. Eetu Luostarinen does not have that yet for this team. But like you said, I don't expect Eric Stahl to be like an 8 to play all 82 games. And hey, who knows? Is it going to be a 40-40, something like that, or is it Eric Stahl is going to be here and then Ryan Lomberg gets scratched for one game and Luostarinen plays on the wing? Because we barely saw Luostarinen on the wing, barely.
I think it's been shown in this camp. It's been shown last season. You don't scratch Ryan Lomberg anymore. He looked too good in that camp for you to scratch him. Like obviously we've seen him the last 2 years. He took a huge step last year. Ryan Lomberg should not get scratched really any games, in my opinion. Another thing, it wasn't just Stahl that had the white jersey. Henry Boldy had a white jersey. I don't know if it's Giles or Gills. How do you pronounce Giles? He had a white jersey. There was a couple guys rocking white jerseys, and Lester Ryan looked like the best player by far on that blue lineup. Like, it wasn't even close for me. Like, it just, his strength, his size, his hockey sense, it looked a lot better than anyone else on that side of the ice. I think it's just mind games. See what this kid, like, when you put a couple guys that weren't on the team last year, a couple guys that haven't even played in the NHL, like Bolby played in Charlotte last year, Syracuse the year before, and then played in college hockey. He was taking runs with the pro guys. Like, I just think it's kind of like getting different looks, trying to see what this kid can do, stuff like that. Lester Ryan's going to make the team.
Mm-hmm. And not only is it mind games, but I also Paul Maurice clarified on Saturday's presser about how, about dividing the numbers between jerseys and pairings together when they actually do their drills as well. So for the most part, one jersey is going to mean something, but as far as the fringe roster players along with the AHL guys, of course, being Lusterin and being in a on the fourth line for most of it, maybe that's why he has the jersey as well. So a little bit of a splitting between the numbers for
you have to even it up some point. And when you want to see how good Eric Stahl looks, when you want to see how good Giles looks, when you want to see how good Bolby looks, like Lister Ryan's going to make the team. So let's just let him dominate that side. Let's see how these guys can compete. I know you're going to bring him up. Let's talk about Matt Kierstead. Matt Kierstead's going to make the team.
Yeah.
Kierstead was in Group B he was with? Matt Kierstead was the most visible defenseman in Group B. Like, it wasn't even close for me. Mark Stahl was there. I think Del Zotto was there. Boteto was there. Matt Kierstead looked like the best one out of all of them. His gap control was unreal. I've talked about his gap control for years. But, man, he's pairing the gap control with the foot speed and the hockey IQ now. There was a drill where he stopped the one-on-one 5 straight times. He stopped Tkachuk. He stopped Bennett. He stopped... he was stopping all the guys on the pro team. Like, Kierstead, when there's like 3 spots available, when there's 5, 6, and 7, Kierstead's gonna get one of those spots. I don't think he should be in the AHL next year. We're gonna see in the split squad games, and we're gonna see in this preseason how he does. But man, that eye test was ridiculous. Like, he looks he's very active with the stick, kind of like a Forsling, where Forsling's kind of getting his stick everywhere. Kierstead has good foot speed, so he can close the gap a lot more than some other guys. And me and Armando were standing there. I'm like, watch what Kierstead's going to do. We're locking guys up. He was locking. He looked like the Miami Dolphins defense on the goal line. He was locking guys up. Matt Kierstead has a very good chance to be on this opening day roster. And if he can make this opening day roster and kind of hold his own, you're probably going to see 50, 60 games of him this year.
Possibly. And I feel like part of maybe the only reason why I wouldn't see him making it, is because of contract status for Kierstead. The coaching staff might see this guy is on a 2-way deal, and we don't want to put these other guys on waivers first at the beginning of the season, because once the waiver wire goes throughout all these cuts of training camps, there's going to be a whole bunch of players who could possibly be claimed. So that is really the only reason why I could see that. However, when we see him in training camp and see how positionally sound he is, he has been from what we've seen. I really don't know how you. I really don't know how you.
Like, it was everything. It was behind the net. It was in front of the net. It was off the rush. Like, the 3 areas where you want your defenseman to succeed defensively, he was doing it all. Mm-hmm. And like, these guys weren't playing around. Kachuk's trying to score, man. Mm-hmm. Like Tkachuk wanted to score. Bennett wanted to score. Lomby wanted to score. These guys wanted to score. They're having fun out there, but they're going hard in these practices. Paul Maurice is breathing down your neck. Mm-hmm. He looked pretty good.
And the fact that that Matt Kierstead's right in his face, and even when Tkachuk doesn't score and being like, not necessarily like mad, he's just like friendly chirping, like something I spoke about really on Friday as well. But the fact that they're they're getting even upset when they don't score in practice. It's like, okay, this seems like a pretty good group out there that this team has, and that the compete level.
And he threw his hand up as if he was give me the penalty call. The group's having fun. When they were doing the board battles, Kachuk jumped on Lomberg. There was 5 guys in the scrum till they blew the whistle. This team's enjoying themselves, but they're working hard.
No doubt. Now let's go ahead and talk about this split squad matchup between the Florida Panthers and the Nashville Predators. We're going to actually do that in segment number 3, and let's talk about what to expect from this split squad matchup. We're going to discuss that next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast.
Your Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Third and final segment here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast on this Monday, September 26th edition of the show. I got Alex Baumgartner here from the 5 Reasons Sports Network. And Alex, tonight we have some split squad matchups between the Florida Panthers and the Nashville Predators in Nashville. One of your colleagues from the 5 Reasons Sports Network, Caitlin Daly, will be there in person to cover the event. So make sure you guys follow her and her work for tonight's matchup. But really, I'm stating a big obvious here, Alex. The number one thing to come out of this for me is that no one gets hurt, first of all. And second, I'm really interested to see how the goalies are going to be splitting time. Of course, 3 goalies in each group, so I'm assuming a period each. We're not going to see or maybe even 10 minutes of Bob and Knight in their first 2 matchups, because we know that you could write it in pen, you could write it in Sharpie, that Bob and Spencer Knight are going to be a part of this team. Whether they carry around a 3rd goalie to start the season, I don't really see that, at least to start. Maybe later down the line. But one person I'm really interested to see, this guy on a PTO, JF Berube, looked pretty decent, at least in person for the first day of camp. And I don't know if Evan Fitzpatrick is going to be the backup in Charlotte behind Alex Lyon, or I think Matt Gutstad is going to probably start in the ECHL. It's either going to be JF Berube or Evan Fitzpatrick, in my opinion, to be the backup to Alex Lyon down in Charlotte.
Yeah, Berube looked good. He looked pretty good. He was very composed, very sound. Obviously, when you're getting peppered off these 2-on-1 rushes, you're going to put in a couple goals, but he made some big saves. I think his positioning was good. Obviously, David Dwork knows more about goaltending than me. I think he likes him too.
By a lot.
Yeah, but I think Berube is going to have to, if he shows up big in this preseason, it's going to be hard for them to not offer him a contract. I mean, he looked good when we watched him, but we're just doing eye tests we see in training camp. We need to see some game action. I would watch out for him. He was probably the 3rd best goalie out of all the goalies I saw on the ice during training camp, personally, at least from where I was sitting. But, yeah, I think he has a good chance of getting a contract if he performs well. If not, he's a good enough goalie to where someone's going to want to pick him up either for their AHL team or for a 3rd goalie, backup goalie, whatever it is. I'm interested to see what he does.
It's funny because on the first day when they were working on rushes going on the other side of the ice where the media wasn't standing, and on the side of the ice where the players were just standing there and waiting for their group to do rushes the other way, one thing that I was just focusing on was just the work that Rob Tallis was doing with the goalies on one side of just making sure they're hugging the post, having a skate on there, making sure they're in the butterfly position and all, having their shoulder hug, like I said, hugging the post, and just the art of goaltending. And then I looked to my left to see if anyone else is doing it. Guess who else was looking? David Dork as well. So the goalie guy looking just to see the art of goaltending and seeing how much work it takes for these guys, because you gotta it. I don't know if I'd ever play goalie at this level with pucks going 100 miles an hour. So the amount of pressure and the amount of footwork and speed that you have to shift from one side to the other with goaltending, and just it was just something that I was just like looking at for like a good 10 minutes.
I mean, I was watching it too, because I wasn't trying to strain my neck through 76 bodies to see those line rushes going the other way. It was cool to see, hugging the post, just corralling the puck, putting it in your glove. It was also cool to see how good Spencer Knight was at that. He was stopping it's the little things. It just, for like a hockey fan, it's pretty cool to see like the rebound control and stuff like that, and just how fundamentally sound a guy like Spencer Knight is with that. But yeah, nothing too much to touch on there. It was pretty cool. Rob Tallis does a great job. The guys love him. He's been here forever. When I played youth hockey in Florida, Rob Tallis was like the best goalie coach. Obviously, he still is. Rob Tallis hockey camp. Everyone went there. That was a goalie.
Yeah. Since 2009, he's been with the Florida Panthers, being their goaltending coach. All right, Alex. We're just about to wrap up here. But who do you think for these split squad matchups? Who do you think has most to prove on a day like today? Who we could see be cut by after, or has a chance to make the first round of cuts? Who do you think has the most pressure on them?
I think they're gonna keep Eric Stahl around until they don't need to have him around. In the case that, when I say that, I mean like if they're still iffy on if they want to give him a contract, they're gonna keep him around until they have to make the decision. I still think Eric Stahl is gonna have something to prove. Obviously, he's gonna want to be here. His brother Mark's gonna be on the team. His brother Jordan's in Charlotte as the coaching staff in the AHL team. He's going to want to be part of this organization. It's a really good team. Eric Stahl won, and since we're going to talk about first cuts, depending on his health, I want to see Justin Sordiff. I don't know if he's going to make the team just because he's been hurt so much. I think he's going to have to start in the AHL, but I'm just interested to see what he does, if he can play. He missed a couple days of camp. He got injured in dev camp. He's a good player. Just keep him healthy, see what he can do. Probably going to start the season in Charlotte. If that's what I'm thinking, it's like 100% for me. He's going to have to start in the AHL. But watch for Eric Stahl. If Sordiff can play, I'm interested to see what he can do. And yeah, that's it.
Yeah, the status for Justin Sordiff is still day to day for as of now. So right now, and Zach Dalpe as well, but Zach Dalpe has done some one work on the side, so he's getting one step closer to returning for the Panthers. I'm gonna go a little bit of a different route, and I'm gonna go with like an older defenseman. I'm gonna go with maybe someone like a Michael Del Zotto, coming from Ottawa. Of course, we talked about Kiersted, and of course, Michael Del Zotto is probably looking at someone like Matt Kiersted and saying, "Oh, this guy is shining. This guy could be the seventh defenseman." If I'm not mistaken, I think Del Zotto's on a two-way deal. I'd have to double check on that. But Del Zotto, being the older guy and seeing seeing that a young guy in Matt Kiersted is kind of showing out great positionally sound, saying, "Hey, of course, being older doesn't mean you're entitled to make it. However, I want to see what Del Zotto can bring to the table during this first preseason game. Of course, we also got to remind ourselves, and I have to remind myself too, during these first 4 days of training camp, the Panthers are playing the Panthers. So sometimes I ask myself, is it good defense for the Panthers that's breaking up these passes, or is it bad offense? Is it good offense going the other way on these rushes, or is it a defensive breakdown? But now we have some games versus an opposition that we haven't seen in them practice. Now we have some game action for these guys to see, are they as up to speed throughout these training camp, and if it can match up against another team. So really, that's really the mindset to go to prior to this game.
Yeah, I agree. It's preseason hockey. Hockey's back. The feet are still warm. We got to get up to game speed, but these guys want to play. So I'm excited. Finally, I get to see the Panthers play again in a game. I've been watching them practice a lot. They're sick of practicing. I'm sick of practice. Let's get these games going.
Yep, that's what that you practice. This is what you prepare for. That's what definitely. And these guys, I'm sure they're excited just to get it going. And of course, we us too are, and along with you guys, the listeners are excited too. And I will be breaking down both of these games on Tuesday's edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. But Alex, always great to have you on. Thank you so much once again for joining this edition of the show. Tell everybody where they can follow you and your work online.
You can find me, Baumgartner 91 on Twitter. You can see it down there below. All my articles are on 5 Reasons Sports, and then when we start doing In the Box again, it's going to be on the 5 Reasons Sports YouTube channel. But, yep, I'm Panthers only. I'm NHL only, so you're going to enjoy it.
For sure, and hope to have you on soon, Alex, and thank you so much for joining. And if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast to be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Don't forget to also subscribe to Locked On Fantasy Hockey with Flip Livingstone and Steel Road, and we'll be covering all the preseason activities around the National Hockey League. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. And for your second listen of the day, make sure to listen to today's episode of Locked On NHL. Locked On experts give you a daily 30-minute podcast on all things NHL. Locked On NHL, your daily 30-minute NHL podcast. So I'm Armando Velez with Alex Baumgartner, and you've been listening to the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day.